Welcome to the Truck Around and Find Out podcast, TAFO. Good morning, good afternoon, or evening, wherever you're tuning in from. This is the Truck Around and Find Out podcast, where we like to get together, discuss some fun topics, hot topics surrounding the trucking industry, safety, community, our lives here in Northern Colorado. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Byers, the owner of Front Range Compliance at DOT University. I am joined today with Redbeard. Luke is at the helm. He's running the controls, and he's going to be my co-host today. Keith couldn't join us. Keith is busy delivering a truck and got some stuff going with his dealership that he works for, Rush Peterbilt. And Keith is the host at Rocky Mountain Peterbilts on YouTube. Check out his YouTube channel. He's got some great trucks. He's been really trying to push some truck sales, since it seems like, the industry and truck sales have kind of been a little bit slow these last several months. So, yeah, and I think he's delivering some today. Hopefully he's multiple. But, hey, Keith, we miss you, but we'll get you back on the next podcast for sure. Luke, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good.
All right, Redbeard, did you have a pretty good weekend?
I did.
Fantastic. Well, we last week was a busy week, so the beginning of the week we went through and we recorded that episode last week with Lonnie. Had a really great time. Thanks, Lonnie, for coming out. Look forward to having you on a future episode, or possibly 2 or 3, who knows. But from there, I took off and I went down to Texas. And I was. We had big training with one of the companies that I've been doing a bunch of training and travel with here lately. And yeah, we had a big training in a place called Longview, Texas. Now, I haven't had a whole lot of driving experience in Texas. Now, I remember my first experience driving in Texas, Luke. It was when I was with the State Patrol, and we were going to the motor coach certification. So we went down there, and it was that training was in Austin. So, we flew in and then we had to drive. We decided to go and do some things. And I remember driving was pretty crazy. Like, we got stuck on the freeway and we missed like 3 exits because, we got to the inside lane, and I remember turning on my turn signal and trying to get over. And it was a busy highway, and there was no room. Like, you couldn't get over. So I missed like 3 exits. I literally, you remember the National Lampoon's European Vacation, He gets stuck on the inside of the roundabout. Hey, look, kid, there's Big Ben.
Yep.
You're supposed to say Parliament, by the way. But anyways, it kind of felt like that. And I remember getting off, and we ended up going to we made it to the class eventually. And I was talking to everybody, and they're like, nah, man, you just turn your turn signal on and you just start moving over. They said, don't make room for you. And they were right. That was the way traffic worked. Well, that was a really long time ago. So I kind of forgot how traffic worked in Texas. Well, apparently things changed, because within the first 24 hours of being in Texas and driving, I came to 2 realizations. Okay. First one is turn signals must not be required. I think they're 100% optional, okay? And lane changes can happen at any given moment. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And Luke, I know I was telling you the story earlier, but it's going to be great for our listeners. So I had to drive from Dallas-Fort Worth to Longview. So it was about close to 3-hour drive. And, I drive here in Colorado all the time, and I always complain about I-25. And I-25 is absolutely an insane stretch of roadway, especially around the Denver metro area, basically from, Colorado Springs all the way up to Fort Collins. It's absolute chaos. It's just very busy, very high volume, and it's always under construction, so everybody's always jammed up. But at least here in Colorado, people may want to make lane changes. I think your biggest problem is when you want to make a lane change, the guy next to you speeds up and closes the gap. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't matter in Texas, because they're coming over whether you want them to or not. So just you don't speed up, because they're coming over. So I learned that real fast. Not that I was speeding up on anybody, but at least here in Colorado, they'll signal and let you know, hey, I'm coming over. Okay, Texas, that's totally optional. And so I was just kind of cruising along, right? I had the cruise control set. There's lots of traffic on, I think it was 20. that I was on Interstate 20 going to Longview from Dallas. And, I'm on the inside lane. I'm going around some semis and I get behind these two trucks and they're essentially just racing down the roadway, right? Side by side, matching speeds. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. I think I was behind them for several miles, like maybe close to 10 miles, and whatever, I'm not going to lose my crap. I'm pretty used to them doing that around here. But anyway, so I am behind the truck that is in the fast lane. Okay. I got another truck that he's matching with that's in that outside lane. Okay. And that outside lane, it's actually open. Like there's a line of cars behind me. And I notice in my rearview mirror, this car comes flying up. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, bud, I don't know where you're going to go because there's no room. Okay, that was my mistake. There was room, just not room. One that anybody that is sane and not from Texas would do. Okay, so I'm literally sitting in this traffic lane and I'm behind the truck who's got maybe just a little hint of a lead on the guy in the slow lane. And I'm like, the only way you can change lanes is like to get up within like feet of this guy and come over in front of me. There's no room. A normal person's going to back off, good proper following distance, and no. He comes over and I see that gap that I've got, and I'm not closing my gap off because it's already tight. And I'm like, I one thing that I'm a huge believer in is following distances, right? And yeah, he did it. He came up, he got insanely close to the trailer of the guy in the slow lane and just cut right over in front of me. And he didn't cut, like he just made a nice maneuver right over, like it was no thing, no courtesy wave, no nothing. And I watched this happen to me, and I made the conscious effort at that point because I'd already seen some other stuff like this going on. I just said, you know what? There's the blood pressure can come back down. I'm just going to increase my following distance because you know what? It doesn't matter if I have if I'm there within that proper following distance or I'm a little further back, or even if I decide to be closer, like what they're doing down there in Texas, they're coming over whether I want them to or not. So I kind of learned I'm just going to back off. I teach that in my defensive driver training. Hey, when you get to insane traffic conditions, what's the best thing to do? Increase your following distance. So I backed the cruise control down just a couple notches below the speed limit where we were going. I was like, everybody's going to want to be in front of you or around you or wherever, and no matter what, they're going to cut you off. And I think the biggest thing that surprised me, especially when I was in the Dallas area, when I saw some really crazy traffic crap going on, was I didn't see a single person get mad. I didn't hear a horn. I didn't see any fingers get waved. Yeah. I didn't see anybody chasing each other. I saw some crazy crap. Like y'all drivers down in Texas, you're insane. Like maybe you have to be to survive on that roadway. It's like, hey, I need this gap. I'm taking it type thing. But holy smokes, I'll take I-25. I came back to Colorado and, even though Colorado has gotten as crazy and as different as it's changed through the last 20 some years, I take I-25 over that stuff any day. And not to mention, the highways are just nuts down there. Y'all got friggin' roads going every which direction. You're exiting right. You got 3 lanes going left, 3 lanes going right. It was absolutely insane traffic conditions down there. Crazy drivers, no turn signals, lane changes happen. So, in fact, I started my class with y'all. I've learned 3 things. Or I've learned 2 things since I've been to Texas, okay? That's that turn signals are optional and lane changes are going to happen no matter what, yep. And so, they all kind of laughed at me and everything else. But, I was very, very surprised. Yeah. So other than that, everybody was really great. But like I said, no fingers, no horns, no road rage craziness. I'm sure it happens. I can't see how it could not, right? That just means that it's so normal that everybody's just knows it's going to happen. So I'm just like, okay, when they talk about that inside lane being for passing only, they're very serious about that. So move over. In fact, it's pretty much, I did notice it's posted up and down the interstate that the inside lane, that number 1 lane is for passing. And I totally get it. But stay out of that lane or you're going to get cut off. It was pretty crazy. So anyway, I did that class down there. And I drove back and got back Friday morning. You know, it was Holly's birthday, so on the 17th. So yeah, happy birthday, honey! I hope you're having a great day and we had a great weekend. We all went out to dinner when we got home that night. So checked out a new restaurant here in Fort Collins, Colorado. It was Choice City, and Holly had heard about it, and she had kind of been dropping some hints that she wanted to check out this restaurant. So I kind of surprised her. I told her that I got us a dinner reservation, and what she didn't know was I got a dinner reservation for, y'all. So we got what's with me and the y'alls today. I just came back from Texas. I'm adopting their language, apparently. So I got, we had my kids and, each of the family members there, and my mom came, and Holly didn't know, so she was definitely, you and Hannah were the first ones there, and we walked right in. I saw you, but she walked right past you and didn't even see you sitting up there. It was hilarious. But overall, I got to give them an A+ for the place, Choice City. So Holly'd been wanting to go to a good burger place, and somebody told her that this was a good burger restaurant. Well, I would classify it as upscale, like burger dining type thing. So, yeah, very elevated, very, very good.
It was fantastic.
It really, really was. And so I would definitely recommend, if you haven't been there, to Choice City in Fort Collins, Colorado. Very, very good food, great service. Drink menu was spectacular. Like they had all craft drinks, and so tons. They had pictures of each of their drinks on their specialty, mixed drinks and cocktails. So many choices, that it was kind of hard to pick. And their beer menu was really off the charts.
Nice. Yeah, there was some cool stuff on there.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. So yeah, definitely if you get a chance, check out that. And then the rest of the weekend, man, I worked on the garage, trying to get it all finished up, doing those last finishing touches. I got the Gladiator series, the wall track up in my tool and work area. Kind of had an open space in there, and just trying to look for some more, just kind of some places where I can get tools and stuff like that organized. And I've been kind of looking at, the different types of tool attachments or, storage options. And I really liked that Gladiator series. So I looked at the Craftsman stuff, and it was pretty basic and plain, and I didn't really care too much for that. And then I looked at the other one, the Troy, not the Troy, it's, I don't know, it's the Lowe's, whatever that one is. And we've got a little bit of that up for like over by the door going into the yard, for like the tools and equipment and stuff like that, yard tools. But I just wanted something in my area, my work area. And I found that Gladiator series, got tons of attachments. And I was looking at what Lowe's had in stock, and it was a lot more limited. And since then, I've discovered that the Gladiator company has their own website and like all their attachments and accessories. And I was kind of looking at that going, wow, I should have put more of this up around the garage. There's option. I mean, they got everything from like golf bag hangers and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool little setup. But anyways, so I did a 48 inch, so basically 4 foot by 6 foot wall space, just kind of covered that. So they did in my house, the original owners swapped out the hot water heater, and they put in a tankless hot water heater. And I'm so thankful that they did, because we never run out of hot water. It's absolutely great. I love it. But their vent pipe, for the exhaust, it's not in the wall. So they basically run it straight up, pop it through, and it comes out right in my workspace, and then makes a 90, goes up toward the ceiling, goes over toward the back wall, makes another 90 where it is vented, and it goes out to its outside vent. And I'm like, I know a sheetrock guy. We could have, if we were going to do this right, we would have just cut a hole and run that right up inside the wall like it should have been, and we would have covered it, patched it, and just repainted. I mean, it was an unfinished garage at that point. It would have been very easy for them to fix it. But yeah, so that might be a project that we do down the road. We didn't do it for this project, but anyway, so I put that Trek board up in that area between the where the refrigerators sit and that wall. It looks really great. I don't have any of the attachments for it yet, but we'll get those put together. Cleaned everything out, swept it all out. Got a couple of the cars moved into it just in time. Right, we're coming into hail season here in Colorado. Yep. As you know, if you live in some of those areas where you get the wicked storms, you get some nasty hail, and here where we're at, we don't get it until we do. So we'll get some little, pea-sized hail every once in a while, some ping pong. I know my Dodge TRX, I got a couple little dings on it, just little places where it hit. But you do see the cars every once in a while that get fully pummeled. And so, we're kind of coming into that season. So I was like, we need to hurry up, get the cars in the garage. And so that kind of thing. Hopefully it'll keep the wife off my tail. She's been wanting to get her car in the garage, I think, for a while now. So that'll make her happy. She just wants it to be warm. Holly, she's always cold. So absolutely. But anyways, so we got the garage finished up, and not finished up, but she's almost done. Just doing some finishing touches, that kind of thing. Moved the Harley over to where she's supposed to be sitting, and just got to get the Camaro pulled out of. Right now, we're storing it here at the office, but we'll get that parked in there and everything. And I guess the last thing I really need to do is break out the pressure washer and just do a good wash on everything. Yep. Wash a couple of the cars, that kind of thing. But anyways, so I had a pretty productive weekend. How about you, Luke? What all did you do this weekend?
Oh, we hung out with some friends, did some chores around the apartment, and that's about it.
You know what cracks me up about your friends is every time you tell me a story about hanging out with them, you always say, we hung out with our married friends.
Yep.
And I'm just thinking, well, you, every time you talk about them, you kind of bring that up. So I was like, well, I hit the springs. I got the gong going here on my mic stand. But you bring that up. You always say my married friends, and because both couples are married, so it's definitely different hanging out with the married friends versus the unmarried friends. Very different. Their philosophies on life, I'm assuming, is different.
Yep, very different. It's a good time hanging out with them. It's pretty funny because we were telling them about the podcast and tell them we do it with Keith Couch, and they're like, Keith Couch? And he shows me a picture, and I'm like, that's not Keith Couch. And name under the picture is Keith Couch. And we always make jokes about it, but the guy who married them last year, his name was Bo Couch, and his brother is Keith Couch, but it's totally different couches compared to our Keith Couch.
A different couch,
which is hilarious. And I asked Keith about it a few weeks ago, and I was like, do you know this guy? And he was like, no, I didn't know that there was another Keith Couch. Well, they asked their Keith Couch about our Keith Couch, and he said, I get confused for that son of a bitch all the time.
Yow. Okay, I bet, because that's one thing. Our Keith, I swear he knows everybody. I mean, I have to give kudos to Mr. Couch, because I think he is part of I know he's a huge part of my success here at Front Range Compliance, because when I first met him, I was starting this business. Another friend of mine put us in contact together, and it was just a friendship right from the get-go. But he'd call me up like, you need another customer. So he knows everybody. Like he really does. He's such a good networker, somebody that knows, and he's not that guy that's always trying to sell. He's definitely believes in the value of human relationships and bonding. So kudos to you, Keith, for that. But anyway, so your guy gets mistaken for him.
Yep, he gets mistaken for our Keith all the time, and that really just tickled my funny bone,
Oh heck yeah, I could totally get that. So it was. So you guys hung out, had a good time, and just enjoyed yesterday, the Sunday, and that kind of thing.
Yep, took it easy. It was pretty nice.
We need to. We've got the Maverick coming up here in 2 weeks.
Yep,
so
go practice again.
On May 1st, we've got we're participating in the Friday event for the Maverick Sporting Clays. That is Colorado Youth Outdoors. It's an organization organization up here in northern Colorado. I wish Keith was here. I was kind of hoping that he could talk a little bit more. He is a longtime member of Colorado Youth Outdoors, and I've been to a few events there with him before. And yeah, it's a really, really great organization. It's basically, they got like I don't know how many acres, but they got this whole wilderness area, lots of places to go fishing. They teach your kids about hunting, fishing, outdoor, that type of thing. And yeah, it's just fantastic little organization. But once a year they do this big, it's the Maverick sporting clay event, and they set it up, the sporting clay shoot, they set up in a canyon up on a ranch. It's called the Sylvandale Ranch. And they set this thing up, and it is spectacular. Like, it is extremely difficult. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's one weekend only. It's a big charity event, huge sponsorship. They're going to have all of the firearms manufacturers are going to be there. There's a stop mid-track or mid-course where you can stop and spend some time, and they have all of the firearms. So, all of the shotguns. And you walk into this tent, and it's just enormous, and it's like you can grab any one of them and you can take it, and they'll throw clays, and you can shoot any of the shotguns that they have there. And, they've got some very expensive ones. We're talking tens of $1,000 shotguns to the several $100 shotguns, so you can go from reality versus, oh my God, this is on my wish list thing. I was really, last year was my first time. Keith invited me to participate in his team. Poor guy. He said, he asked me to go, and I didn't really divulge to him the whole truth. I was like, yeah, I can shoot, but I also didn't tell him, by the way, my shoulder's blown out and I'm working on getting a shoulder surgery now, and I probably shot the worst round of sporting clay as I ever shot in my entire life, and kind of drug his whole team down. And, he puts on a good face, says, oh, it's never about that. It's just about friends. And I'm like, yeah, it is. But
when it comes to this one,
I was pretty pathetic out there for you guys. I'm so sorry. But I was a little selfish, so I didn't divulge the whole truth last year because I really wanted to check it out, and I'm glad I did. So, after it was all done, they said, okay, because it's really hard to get in this. They said, we're doing the initial sign-ups. If you want to get signed up, you got to get in line, get your name on the list now, and if you can get in the list, we'll call you. You'll be guaranteed for next year. Well, that line, I jumped up and I went and signed up, but I noticed that line got really, really long, and they had the sign-up list. There was like a cutoff on it, and I was just over the cutoff. I made it in there. So we did get registered for a team this year, and it's going to be you, Mike, my son-in-law, and we're going to bring down Byron. So Byron from Cheyenne, he's the state fire marshal up there in Cheyenne. We're going to get him down to shoot with us. So yeah, we need to go out and practice. Get another. We've been trying to get some practice in up at Great Guns up in Alt, Colorado, and get that done. But so we've got the Maverick coming up with Colorado Youth Outdoors. Maybe next week we can get Keith to talk a little bit about their program, that kind of thing. But then, other than that, we're just kind of back to business. Trucking, right? I guess, we've kind of been talking about our lives a lot this morning. But, trucking, a lot of stuff's going on. I've been reading some articles, really trying to figure out, different things to talk about. I think I'm going to save the cargo theft stuff for next week. There's a little bit more I want to research in that. Just got my hands on a great article. It's kind of long, talking about the sophistications in cargo theft and what's going on. It really reminds me of that event that happened a few years ago, and I think I talked briefly about it in one of our past podcasts when I talked about some of the scams and stuff like that, but I'm going to kind of dive back into that. There's a lot going on with CDL. I noticed this weekend, looking at the news, hearing some more stuff coming up with CDL regulations versus visa and immigrant drivers. There's some timelines that lapsed. They haven't really lapsed, but we're coming up on some timelines. Some of the headlines that you're seeing through social media are saying, "Oh, these states are going to go back to giving CDLs." You got a lot of them are clickbait, so you kind of got to watch that. But it sounds like that there is going to be maybe some different rules or upcoming rules, and I'm not quite speaking correctly onto this, but it's something to do with the different types of work visas, and I get the alpha characters all mixed up, but I'll do some more research on that. Maybe come back next week. I think the biggest topic that I found that we really need to talk about is the stuff that's going on with DataQs. DataQs is one of those things that I have had a lot of heartburn through the years with the DataQ because of how it was set up. You go through, first off, you don't know what a DataQ is. For the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, DataQs is kind of the due process. So if you have a mistake or something with your on-road data, you file a DataQ, a request for data revision, or an RDR or DataQ. And so you would file this request. It goes to the state agency or to the feds, whoever's responsible for the data, and they review it, and they will either tell you no, they're not going to make the change, or they'll see what your point is and they'll make the change. So you go through a roadside inspection, and things are not correct. Things aren't following the correct plan, or you kind of get the gist that the officer's not on the up and up, and they kind of write some stuff up that they shouldn't be. You do the DataQ, and next thing you know, they tell you no. And they always use the famous words. Well, at the time of inspection, this was the condition. And, I've seen that. And back when DataQs first started, that kind of came to my table as the training coordinator at Motor Carrier Safety for Colorado. So I was one of the first ones to handle DataQs, after it got up and running, going clear back in before 2010, whenever that started. And it was interesting because, and I've got to give Colorado a lot of kudos to this, because they're also tied to some of these big changes that's coming in. But this is back when Scott Hernandez, he's the former chief of the Colorado State Patrol, but he was also, when I first went to Motor Carrier Safety, Scott was the major. Well, he was the captain in Motor Carrier Safety, and then he promoted to major, and then lieutenant colonel, and ultimately made it to chief. But Scott's philosophy, when we first started working on that, and in our meetings that we had for preparations, was he wanted an efficient due process. He wanted you to take a good, honest look at it and give the people, the due process that was deserved. And the reason I say I credit Colorado is because not every state has that. There are states that you do a DataQ, and it's like they flip you the middle finger every time, and it's denied. And that's what happens when you do a DataQ and you file this complaint, and it goes in, and it's not really a complaint. It's just like, hey, look at this data. The things don't jive, or this is incorrectly written up, or whatever it could be from your roadside inspection violation. And they send it to the officer. They ask the officer. The officer says, no, they're wrong. It was in violation. They come back and tell you to pound sand. So you're doing an efficient challenge to the party who is naturally biased against your situation, because they're the ones that wrote the violations. So they're right, you're wrong. Well, that's the way it always works. So I for a long time, I've always thought that there needs to be an intermediate, like a third party, just like when you go to court. When you go to court on a criminal code, the burden of the proof is on the state. It's not on you. Well, for the FMCSA stuff, it's just opposite. You're doing the challenge. You're the one saying that the data is wrong. The burden of the proof is on you, and that's one of the things that is stated in this new change that we're going to see. But I think it's okay. I'm actually really happy with this. And again, going back to the state of Colorado, this whole process, this newer process, is the foundation is based on the state of Colorado's current DataQ process. So I met with John Hahn here a while back, former captain of Motor Carrier Safety, who is now retired and enjoying working for a cargo tank motor carrier. He told me it's a whole lot different structure than the state patrol. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like chaos, right? You're a chaos coordinator, and yeah, he could definitely relate. But he and I here not too long ago, about a month and a half ago, we actually had a conversation about DataQs, and I told him some of the stories and some processes and some problems that I've come in with, and so we started talking about the state of Colorado process, and it was really, really good, the foundation, and he was actually tied to helping the FMCSA come up with this new one. And they really did base, they took the good aspects of what Colorado was doing, and I'm sure there was probably some other states involved, and they kind of built this new process. So I overall, I'm really kind of hopeful for it, but this is how it works. So the FMCSA issued a final notice of the revision of the DataQ process for challenging crashes and inspection data, okay, which the states now are going to be directly tied. The state compliance is now directly tied to the MixApp programs for their grant funding. So that basically what that is saying is they're going to be reporting, their processes, their DataQs and stuff like that, showing their framework and that structure to the FMCSA. And if they're not compliant with the program, the FMCSA can pull some funding. So with that, the new new framework mandates a 3-stage review structure. It's going to be an initial review. So you're going to put in your challenge, okay, and that is going to then go into a review. And then if it comes back, and if you're unhappy with it, then you could enter it in for a 2nd stage review, which is going to be for reconsideration. Okay. And then if that comes back to you and you're unhappy with the outcome, then you can send it in for a final review. And essentially what that is going to do for the initial review, it's going to go to whoever the DataQ coordinator is for that state. They're going to follow their process, their procedures to review that and send that outcome back to you. So either they'll accept it and they'll make the change, or they'll deny it, okay? And then when it comes back to you, you can basically appeal that. And that'll go back to them. Then that DataQ coordinator on the reconsideration is going to involve whatever their policy is, the next step. That's typically going to be an officer review where they're supposed to get a different, not the officer that wrote the violation. It's supposed to go to a third party so they can kind of look at it for reconsideration, okay? And then when they come back with their findings, again, if it needs to go back in, then it'll go to the final review, which I believe they're supposed to have like a review board set up to say, okay, this company has essentially felt so strongly about this that they have appealed this now twice. Okay, and so we need to really give them true data back and some expertise on back with that situation. So each of those are going to be a different level. So in the final notice establishes a uniform national timeline. So with this whole process, so with that being said, the states are on a timeline, so you don't just submit it and it just kind of gets stuck out there, okay? It says the states must respond within 21 calendar days of the additional and reconsideration reviews, okay? And they have up to 45 days for the final review. So that is absolutely great. Now, the one thing that if the state does request you to send in some additional documentation, that does pause their clock because they're waiting on you. And it also puts the clock on you, okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing those DataQs. Don't just turn it in and then stay away from it. You need to stay tuned in to see what's going on, because if they do request some additional data, you as the requester, you got 14 days to respond to it. So they will close that down. If it comes back and they don't get a response, they can close it down with the requester failing to respond or failure to communicate. So they can pause their clock. So remember that your first two, your initial and the reconsideration, they have up to 21 days to respond. So they're pressing. They got to get it done. And then if you do send it in to where it needs to go to like a review board, okay, they're going to have 45 days to respond. Now carriers, you have to submit any requests for appeal to the final rule for the final review within 30 days. So each of these, remember, it's one of those things, the timeline is set. So when they respond to it, if you disagree with it, you need to prepare your appeal, and you need to get that submitted within 30 days so that it can continue. So if you wait too long, you're going to lose the chance to do that appeal. So that kind of thing. Now, they did put special notes in here that says the burden of proof rests entirely on the requester at every stage, and any new requested evidence submitted on appeal is generally routed back to the initial review. So keep that in mind that, as you submit new stuff, that it could take that back for initial review, but the burden of the proof is on you. And, when I do my DOT compliance classes and I talk about DataQs, there are DataQs that are easy to win, like incorrect carrier stuff like that, and that's also one of the fraud schemes we've got. I've discovered here recently that there's a massive scheme where companies are stealing crashes, because one of the DataQs it says that you can challenge is if you're missing an accident on your profile. Well, okay, what you see is you've got these huge supermotor carriers out there that have thousands of trucks. They have tons and tons of crashes. Well, some of them are non-preventable, or not still in crashes. I'm sorry, still in inspections. I totally misspoke on that. But you see a missing inspection, then you can do a DataQ. Well, what they do is they go to these super carriers and they notice they have tons of crashes. I'm stuck on crashes today. It must be that Texas driving stuck in my head. But they'll go and they'll steal a clean inspection with no violations, and they'll claim, hey, it was coded the wrong carrier. This is my inspection. And then that initial request, the state DataQ authority reassigns that inspection to a company, to the different company. These great big super companies are getting thousands of roadside inspections every year. They're not going to miss one or two, right? So that's one of the schemes that's going on and that kind of thing. So, just to kind of keep that up, you keep that in mind. You want to make sure you have your crashes. Definitely don't be stealing crashes from other companies. But with that, the proof rests entirely on the requester. So when you go through and you're building this, as I would train, you kind of got to build your case, and you have to treat it like when you're preparing your argument, get rid of the fluff. I remember back when I was running it, we had an old retired trooper out in western Colorado that he would always do his DataQ, and it was way long. The guy just talk about how the sun is shining beautifully and the flowers are coming up, and he just loves life and yada yada yada. By the time you get through all of his fluff, you'd finally get to his request. Okay, yeah, don't do that. People. I always laughed at this one because I knew who the guy was, but overall, get rid of the fluff and kill the attitude. Okay, whenever I do a DataQ, I tend to type it up, walk away, come back to it a little bit later, and read it and keep an open mind because I can tend to be a little bit curt in it. So, like I said, prepare it. I would definitely type it up, your responses, as if you are, educating somebody that doesn't understand the rules. So if you're going to quote rules, don't just assume that the requesters in the state is going to know what you're talking about. Okay, you have to lead them to the point that you're trying to make. So if you're using evidence, if you're using regulation, if you're using interpretations, make sure you make each point and explain in detail why that point means this, that type of thing. So the DOT regulations are so vast and so massive that, and with all the interpretations, things can get lost in translation. So it's like you really need to lead them to the answer, so point out exactly why you're coming up to the findings you are. So prepare that, get it all done, supply your evidence, give them a copy of the regulations, that you're referring to, just to make sure that they're seeing what you're seeing, that type of thing. Prepare all that evidence because the burden of the proof is on you. So you are going to have to prepare your own case. There are agencies that do that. We do them, that kind of thing. Lawyers do them, that kind of thing. But, like I said, treat it as if you're about ready to educate somebody on the rules, the regulations to get them through that. So with that being said, there is this new DataQ process, and do your DataQs, be consistent about it. DataQs for each state is usually managed by one or two people. Yes, it may open up. They're going to receive the challenge, then they're going to go through and disseminate it the way it needs to be. Even if it's a small team that is handling it, it's not a big part of the motor carrier safety programs. They don't have a whole lot of employees doing it. Usually, it's just one or two people just handling it, and then as they're going to get their appeals, they're going to move and involve the more people in that whole process. So, with that being said, they're going to get to know you. I got to know the people. There are certain companies out there that literally do a DataQ on every violation they get, okay? And you're going to get a reputation, and they're going to not take you serious when you are doing a DataQ. So here at Front Range Compliance, I review tons of inspections. We get tons of internet submissions to us to do DataQs, and people call in. And we listen to them, we look at them, I have them send up the paperwork, and we do the review, and I'm just straight up with them. And I get people to get really mad at me, but I'm like, look, I understand what you're arguing, but there's no way to argue this and win it. There's no evidence to overturn this. Just, I think the officer's wrong and I'm right, and I don't think the violation existed. You're never going to win those. So you have to plan your defense. You have to get it ready to go. So kind of plan that. So plan it out. Get your DataQ ready. And if you need help with DataQs, okay, guidance, assistance, here at Front Range Compliance, it's our philosophy to keep our doors open. So if you've got questions, you can reach out. The best way to reach out is going to be at info@Front Range Compliance. That is an email that is managed by Redbeard. And he will see to it that either he answers the question or he's going to seek some assistance from me or one of the other staff members, which is going to be typically, it's going to be Nicole, I, or Luke that are going to be responding to you. So if you do have a question, reach out. The reason I keep an open door, and we're not going to send you an invoice if you happen to call us and ask us a question, just simply stated, I got into this industry because I saw this big gap and people didn't know where to get answers or solutions and stuff like that. So we want to make sure we keep our door open, not stealing the theme of any other company or anything out there. But you know what? We want to make sure that you have a place and a resource where you can go to get some answers. And some days that's a little bit of a curse, because I swear there's days that I spend the entire day on the phone and don't get the rest of my work done. But we want to make sure that we're there to assist and be a resource for companies, as well as we have our DOT safety management company and stuff like that. So if you do have a DataQ, okay, I'm not saying I'm going to review your DataQ and that just for free, that kind of thing. If you put us to work, that's going to be a different story. But if you do need some help, want us to look at, just want to bounce an idea, you're welcome to give us a call if you have a question, something like that. If you need some help doing DataQ, we can definitely at least review and get you lined out. Yes, there may be some fees involved in that side of it, but I guess the point I'm trying to say is we have a solution for you. Definitely a little bit cheaper than transportation attorneys, that kind of thing. But with that, you can also find us at our website, frontrangecompliance.com. That's www.frontrangecompliance, all scrunched together. Everybody knows that by now, .com, and you can get some information. So with that, big changes to DataQ. So definitely, follow your data. If you don't have an online portal account with Modus and everything that's going on, every motor carrier needs to have a portal account. And how that's changed, I mean, looking at the years, for years I'd tell everybody, yeah, portal's kind of a waste, and it was a total pain in the neck, because like every 3 months it's changing its passwords and you can't get access. So everybody just kind of lost it. And then, when in 2020, when the clearinghouse hit, kind of forced everybody to get back involved with their portal accounts, and that was kind of a disaster for some companies. It still is. And now they got all this stuff going up with the Modus, the new data stuff and the way everything works. And just to do an update, you got to have portal. And I think a lot of it, and I think it'll come up next week with all the cargo theft. Overall, I think the portal is good. Back in the day, portal was only if you had a lot of on-road performance stuff. Other than that, if you were just a trucking company and all you had to do is a biannual update every couple of years and you had no other interaction, portal was kind of a waste of time and effort. But now everything is tied through your portal. So make sure you get your portal access. Make sure you're monitoring it. Again, looking for frauds, things like that. Make sure you're getting your roadside inspections and maintaining them. Okay. It amazes me how many times I go into a company and I'm like, okay, where's your roadside inspections? And I've only, in 20 years, I've only had like one or two pull out a binder and been like, here they are. I've got all my inspections. Other than that, they're like, yeah, we got our inspections. Okay, where are they? Well, we've got them in files. Okay, what files? Well, we find them in driver files. We find them in vehicle files. Like your roadside inspections, those are important. And if you're managing your fleet and wanting to see what kind of trends you got going on, you need to have those all in one place. Remember, yes, the CSA program and your your SMS, the safety measurement system, yes, it does keep all your inspections there. But all it shows is the generic charging language. You can't see what the officers wrote. So make sure you get a copy of those inspections and keep them in chronological order and review them to see what your trends are and pay attention to the officer's language that they write with each of those violations, that type of thing. Or if you happen to get in the officer notes, make sure you're familiar with that. That way you can prevent a problem. This is all about preventative maintenance and trying to be as safe as we can out there on the roadway. So get those roadside inspections, get them in a binder so that you can be more efficient and do those DataQs timely. Okay. I hate it when I get the phone call and they're like, okay, 13 months ago, we took this violation, right, Luke? You've seen many of those.
Oh, yeah.
So 13 months ago, and the insurance company just called me and said, hey, I should do a DataQ on this. And I'm like, your insurance company doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. First off, an equipment violation that is 14 months old. Yes, we have 2 years to do it. But how are we going to truly, like in good faith, go to the state and say, oh, hey, this happened 14 months ago. Can you take this off? Because then it looks like all you're trying to do is clean up your numbers. And in reality, that's exactly what you're doing. Yep. Like if you felt so passionate that that violation was wrong, okay, as soon as that report came to you so you could put it in your trusty, dusty little binder, why'd you not look at it and do the DataQ right then and there? Like, let's get on top of this. So remember, to be successful in DataQs, it's a timely process. So yeah. So that being said, hey, Luke, you got a TAFO today? Anything you're thinking about that we could talk about, truck around and find out?
Talking about all these DataQs, I had one a couple weeks ago, and I can't quite remember what they were asking me to remove or help them challenge with this DataQ. But, I asked the guy, I said, well, what proof do you have to show that this violation was wrong? Well, none. I'm like, well, I don't know what you want me to do then.
Yeah. We get a lot of those where people are just, you can hear the passion. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Like, here's the thing, okay? The majority of our DOT officers, first off, they are exceptional people. And it's probably the hardest job I ever had in my life was when I changed from just being a regular road trooper and moving into motor carrier safety. The knowledge, the skills, the work that these guys have to do, it's a lot.
It is. And
it is a lot. So I give kudos to a lot of my state enforcement and federal enforcement people. But with that, you run into a lot of attitudes also. Mm-hmm. State enforcement people, I will tell you, take a deep breath, okay? I know you deal with 1,000 different personalities a day, and then you probably deal with a whole bunch that are really unhappy with you because you're a state enforcement official. But remember, that one guy you're talking to, that's his first interaction with a state official, maybe in his life, maybe today, okay, and that kind of thing. So remember, you may have dealt with 1,000 personalities, but this is the first time he's dealt with your personality, okay? And when they walk away and you're giving them attitude, well, they tend to walk away and think, man, those guys are kind of dicks, okay? Yep. So take a deep breath, be patient, and remember, education is key. We're looking in our philosophy, and when I say ours, because I'm thinking back when I was one of these guys, the philosophy should be we're looking for voluntary compliance. We want people to naturally do the right thing, and part of that comes education. So be able to explain, cut the attitude. Okay, but with that, you do run across people that make mistakes on these roadside inspections. Absolutely. But we also see that there are ways that officers can code violations, and they can kind of pad their numbers, mm-hmm. okay? And that does happen. It does, okay? And for instance, probably the number one that I see a lot with like padding violations is cargo securement, okay? Cargo securement, the officer can write that up 3, sometimes 4 different ways for the same violation. And sometimes it's multiple out of services. They can write it up under the basic, 393-100 for just the cargo's not secured. They can write it up for the commodity specific. They can write it up for length. They can write it up for weight. They can write it up for tons of different things. Defective strap, okay? Unsecure load, 393-100. Defective strap, 393-108, okay? They can write it up. I mean, they can write it up 4 different ways, put it out of service, and the system doesn't catch on to it, okay? That's a great DataQ when you see those types of things, but I've even had some states come back and say, oh, no, you have to fix all those things. It's like, okay, that can be accomplished with one violation, not multiple out of services, right? Yep. And I think a lot of the enforcement officials also don't truly understand just how this impacts a motor carrier. Their insurance rates skyrocket, I mean, it's astronomical. So you really do. You're not just taking enforcement right then and there. You're actually punishing this company for the years to come, because it's going to take them 2 years to get that to drop off. And meanwhile, their insurance is going to now cost them thousands and thousands of more dollars potentially, especially because they look at an inspection. They see, oh, you got, 6 cargo securement violations on one inspection. And yeah, I'm over exaggerating, but you got 2, 3, sometimes 4 cargo securement violations. 2 of them are out of service. And, it makes the insurance. So, that's one of the things. Remember, you're enforcement officials, not the punishers, that kind of thing. So with that, be honest with your program. I've also seen officers do stuff intentionally, that they shouldn't do. Well, I would say this: every career force, doesn't matter what occupation you're in, there's always a bad apple somewhere in the bunch, right? That it just happens, man, and that's just human nature. So, hopefully you don't have to deal with those, but they are out there, and that's what DataQ is for. So it gives you a voice. I love this new review process. So my truck around and find out, my TAFO of the day is that one DataQ that we did here a couple years now, and it still kind of gets me a little bit worked up, because it just flat pisses me off, because this review process, and this was done in Colorado, and I brought this up to John Hahn when I was talking with him about it, and he was shocked. It did happen just before he was captain. So the previous guy, and I don't want to name him, but because it wasn't his fault. But that was the steer axle that we dealt with. Yep. And we shot. So we had this DataQ, okay, and this violation where the enforcement officer put this guy out of service up here in northern Colorado for a pitman arm being loose on the steering output shaft, power steering output shaft, okay? And it was not a loose pitman arm.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. What was going on was, when you grab the drag link and you shake it back and forth just to make sure everything is tight, the pitman arm, it did move, but it wasn't the pitman arms moving. It was actually the steering gear output shaft. It had literally a 1/16 of an inch that it would just very slightly rock back and forth, not up and down vertically. It would just slide just a 1/16 of an inch, just a click, 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 okay, in and out of the power steering gearbox, okay. Output shaft was tight as can be. The regulation says the pitman arm is not properly secured and tight on the power gear output shaft. Well, it was just the output shaft was moving. And we actually saw another one of these that another company wanted us to challenge. The problem was, when you looked at that power steering gearbox, there was a huge maintenance problem. Yes, it was the pitman arm was tight, but the power steering gearbox was leaking so much fluid that entire side, the driver's side of the engine, the brakes, the tire, were so permeated in grease and oil and power steering fluid that I literally looked at it and said, I'm like, yeah, we're not touching your problem with the 10-foot pole. I'm not submitting photos of this and saying, hey, this power steering system is good. Yes, the violation wasn't what they said it was, but dude, you got to clean up your truck, right? Yeah. Okay. So this was another one that happened, and it was all within a couple months of each other. And the power steering it was a good system. It was clean. So we shot the videos and everything else. The first thing they did was they accused us of faking the video. I can't prove that the video is the same. And I'm like, hey, knucklehead, you didn't even watch our video. So first off, when you're doing DataQs, okay, talk about a TAFO. If you're going to do a DataQ, they very much limit your video, like what you can upload. It's got to be like 5 megabytes. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's ways to do this now with different software and video links. Okay. But here's the thing. So we went through and we tried to make the video, and we took it from, I don't know, some whatever it was in gigabytes down to 5 megabytes. And I mean, it was laughable. It was like, yeah, I think I'm looking at a video of a truck right now. It was so pixelated, you couldn't see anything. I was like, we can't submit that. So what we did was we kind of set up through our YouTube channel. We put up the links, and we made them private links, so they weren't open to the public. And then we gave them the link so that they could go to it. And they denied it. First off, they said, well, this video could be faked or it's faked and it's not the same thing. Okay, first off.
Didn't they say it wasn't the right truck, that it was a whole different truck we were showing?
Yeah, and I was like, dude, you didn't watch the video. Like, literally, Luke and I sat and talked about that. I'm like, look, this is what they're going to claim. Mm-hmm. So we shot it starting at the plate, live and uncut. We moved to the VIN number. Okay, we got the unit number. We scrolled into the VIN number. So we did this always real timely just to make sure it was smooth. It was an uncut. Then we went to the part. We talked about it. We made sure that it was very clear that it could be seen that this was the exact same truck. Mm-hmm. Well, this video is the wrong truck, or you can't prove. I'm like, dude, you didn't even watch the video. Not to mention, we have the video software so we can see if it's ever been viewed. They never even viewed the damn video.
Nope.
Okay. So we actually did that, and then we actually also we resubmitted. We did the follow up, and we got denied. Okay. I don't know, maybe some of this is part of the reason why they have these new processes. So I went back to the company. I was like, guys, I'm sorry. They're not going to accept this. And we tried to get them to accept it. And we got told to go pound sand. So the company was pissed because they agreed with me. Now, first of all, for those of you who are listening, it is a maintenance issue, okay? But there are two individual articles published by CVSA. And they both say, yes, it is a maintenance problem. However, it is not a writable violation unless the actual failure has happened. And they said if that movement in that power steering is left unchecked without fixing, yes, it will eventually wear out the seal and you will start leaking fluid. But up until that point, until the seal is starting to leak, it's not a violation. Okay. And I submitted all that to them because I wasn't going to expect that they're going to know those two publications, even though it's the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance. I submitted both of those articles with this, and they still denied me. It still just gets me a little bit, gets my blood pressure rolling. But anyway, so the company ultimately said, we're taking this the distance. So I explained the court process, right? I'm like, okay, well, they wrote him up and failure to comply with DPS rules and regulations, a traffic misdemeanor here in Colorado. And so I told him, go to court, meet your court date, have your driver plead not guilty, and request a trial to the court. Okay, and then he can basically at that point you just go in, you meet with the judge, in your next court hearing they subpoena the officers, the company can subpoena me and everything else. And it should be good and easy. Now, I'm not a lawyer, right? So, yeah, I'm not the expert that should say, hey, how the court proceedings are going to go. I just know that the driver came back and said, okay, here it is, and they set it up for a jury trial. You got to be just what a joke, right? Yep. So the state, with their knucklehead move that they did, ended up, this company had to now hire a lawyer because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to be able to guide this company, this driver, through a jury trial. So they had to hire a lawyer. And you know what? Thank goodness they did, because they're like, no, we're taking this one the distance. They hired a lawyer. They did the jury trial. And it was dismissed in like 10 minutes, the whole thing. And I was just like, so with the state's failure to recognize this, and most companies won't take them this distance because it's time, it's money. It's like, no, we'll just suck it up and deal with it for the next 2 years, then it'll drop off. And that's the total wrong attitude. It's like, no, we got to hold the states accountable. We got to follow these processes, because other than if we don't challenge it, it's never going to happen.
Yep.
So they did it. Thank goodness they did. They got it removed, and I was so happy to write that DataQ. Okay, we tried to challenge this. Y'all wouldn't listen to us. Now I've got a court saying, take it the heck off. It got dismissed. Like, this should not have been a violation. You should have listened to me from the get-go. I honestly think that in this particular situation, the company should have been asked the state to pay for their legal fees, because what in the world? That's just ridiculous. It was. It kind of chapped me up. But anyways, that's what I got for us today. Anything you want to throw in there, Luke?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Truck Around and Find Out. Keith, we'll catch you on the next one. Luke, thanks for helping me out with this one. Thank you for what you guys do. You in the trucking community, you will help move this country forward. Like I said, if you bought it, they brought it. So make sure you got it. Keep our shiny side up and stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Catch you on the next podcast.